This is our so-called knowledge corner, where I will share some of the techniques, nuances about maybe any specific exercise, variation of exercise, and so on. So in this case, we will talk about our torso rotation machine, which we call it F1. This is our code for it. And this specific machine basically targets our obliques and also deep abdominal muscles as well. And it was actually, when it was designed, it was engineered with the help of professional golfer. Don't remember the name of the golfer, but I remember he was a pro. And it showed when they did the study on this machine, when people who train on it, it increases, if you play golf, it increases the drive distance and velocity as well. So Jim is a golfer. Right? He likes to golf, and I have so many stories of other clients who've been using this machine for quite some time, basically testifying the effectiveness and how this machine improves the golf game. So the way it works, Jim's gonna have a seat there, and I'm gonna put his feet here, and I'm gonna kind of point out some of the important cues. So we're gonna make it. So the idea is here we're using this log here to push Jim's femur bones against the hips, right? So the hips are going to be nicely locked. So when you're doing your torso rotation movement, you're trying to keep kind of legs pressed against this foot pad and your hips locked. So we don't want movement coming from the hips, just from the core. Jim is going to wrap his arms about around here. There's two sides, left and right. So we're just going to do kind of one right now. We're gonna get Jim started here. So Jim, basically what you want to do when you do this exercise before you start, think of your spine sort of like being the axis of rotation. Okay. Right? So you're sitting nice and straight, this is your axis of rotation, and you're just kind of torquing your torso using the core along that axis of rotation. You go as far as you can towards your right, pause, and then slowly down. Again, keeping in mind the hips, keeping it locked, shoulders should be relaxed and pressed back, so your spine is sort of the axis of rotation. And you're trying to use your core muscles kind of to torque yourself around that axis of the spine. Okay, let's try this nice and slow. Go as far as you can. Yeah, pause. Yeah, perfect. So that works on Jim mobility, flexibility in those muscles. Pause just before the plates touch. Yeah. Okay. That's usually where I would stand. Hold on. Yeah. Help you. Yeah. Keep breathing. Yeah. So perfect. Excellent range of motion to here. Keep it muscle tension. And right now, since we're going towards the right, Jim is essentially using his right side. And we're gonna keep going until we can't. And that's how this exercise works. And then we simply change the sides, and then Jim will train his left side. Hi. Today we will be I will be talking with Jim McGrath. He's been client with New Element Training for some time now, and Jim is established music composer with TV and film, and I'll let Jim kind of tell us a little bit as we go through the podcast what he does, his personal and professional achievements, and and we go from there. Jim.
Hi, Andrew.
Thank you for agreeing to be on our second episode. Awesome. I'm still, finding my way around how to be comfortable being in charge of the interview. I've been on the other side, but on this side it's kind of relatively new. Sure. So I offer you to join me today because as we've been training together, I've been training you, been your trainer for some time now, several months. And we kind of established with very nice rapport, like you're kind of like a friend to me. Yeah. I've seen you in playing.
I know.
Your trumpet in music in the bar. So, Sophie, we came to see your shows. We know your wife Anita, and I thought, in the beginning, one of those, first episodes, I'd like to talk to somebody I feel very comfortable with, and I chose you. So, thank you for agreeing. So. Let's maybe start with you and New Element Training, how you ended up here, and then kind of how long you've been coming. And
okay, I heard about New Element through a friend about almost exactly a year ago, and it's one of those things where I'm a reasonably bright guy. I know intellectually I should be getting exercise, but at the same time, I beat myself up about going, you really should get some exercise, which I've just never really been a gym rat. I had a personal trainer for about 10 years when I was in my 40s, but this, the scientific aspect of New Element really attracted me. Like I'd heard about, what is it, HIIT?
Mm-hmm.
Is that it?
High intensity interval training.
I'd heard about that, and I'd actually done some of it. So I started working with you. I read your book, and I've been doing it, like I said, for almost a year, and I do it twice a week. I love it, and I feel great. And one of the biggest benefits from it is I no longer feel guilty about not working out. And the only frustration for me is that when I try to tell people about it, they just don't believe it. You know, they don't believe that, oh, come on, 2.5 hours a week, how can it be? And it's try it.
Exactly.
And also, I think that the main thing about it is the idea of working to failure is something you can't do by yourself. I don't think. I know when we're working together, when I'm training with Sarah, it's like there's just no way I would be holding that weight for another 30 seconds. Heck, there's no way I would keep doing it if there wasn't a person with a clipboard there. And there's just something about that dynamic that you can't get by yourself. I don't think. I mean, I certainly could.
I'm the same. The only time I would do workout on my own is basically when I don't want to have a real workout.
Yeah.
Because also it's probably not natural for us to push ourselves to that limit, because we're literally taking muscles to the full exhaustion, which is, from the evolution point of view, probably would happen in life-threatening. Exactly.
Chased by a saber-toothed tiger.
That's the only time. But for fun, come on, we didn't do it for fun. So this is kind of relatively new.
And built in also is the human dynamic of what it's an interesting thing. What are you or another trainer going to do if I stop? Like, you're not going to do anything. You're not going to shame me. You're not going to make me feel bad about it. For some reason.
Well, I would, but
but for some reason, I just am not gonna. There's a pride thing. There's I don't know what it is, but there's something about it. You're in the moment, and I guess it's also, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to fold.
My favorite part?
What?
Training to failure. Once you get into this tunnel vision, meaning you in that fight and flight.
Yeah.
Literally, we're all the same in terms of, it doesn't matter. You could be judge, you could be a billionaire, you could be, a janitor.
Yeah.
We're all the same. It's just you in that state where all those, ego-based life stories, they don't really matter at that moment. It's just you in this moment, and you basically making two decisions. Decision one, to keep going. Decision two, to quit.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And when I train clients, I don't know, I somatically in my body, I feel it. It hits me when the client gets into that state of failure. Like when it gets real, it's like a wave of energy hits me, and my body gets excited. I feel like wave of excitement coming to me. Now it's real. Now I'm having fun. Because now it's just it's real. It's authentic. We're not faking anything. So there's quite a bit of integrity in this experience.
Yeah, and I think that there's something inherently noble about working hard, right? Like the eyes, and there's no question. For that half hour, you're working as hard at that as anything you've ever worked hard at. I don't know how you couldn't work any harder, actually, when I think of it. And I don't know, I've just found it. I found it great. I mean, I don't ever. Another interesting thing, I never feel that. I go to the gym. I never feel that, because I don't know. It's just the way my brain is processing it. I never think of, it's going to be really hard, or it's going to really hurt, or etc. I for some reason, I'm a zombie. I must go to the gym now. Get on the subway or my bicycle. I just show up.
Welcome to the net. church, or clan or temple.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
Yeah, you once again brainwash, you hook like me. The same way how I discovered this, right? I read that book Body by Science by Doug McGrath and John Little. And that's the last time I trained conventionally because something about it, I'm just like so rational. And it feels so great to push yourself so hard, and you don't feel guilty taking that much time between the sessions. Where before I would work out, 3-4 times a week, right, and feel guilty when I skip here. It's like that guilt is kind of not there.
Well, I love and the book. I love the book, because as I've mentioned to you, I'm a trumpet player, and there are a lot of the same concepts were resonant for me that are in the book. There's particularly there was a thing talking about the hara point?
The center. Yeah, it translates center of man in Japanese.
Players, it's funny. The whole thing about playing the trumpet is you're playing. I guess it's like singers or whatever. You're playing from below your navel, like that's where the energy and where the power or whatever comes from. So I love it when there's this universality about things, and the muscle failure and learning how to play trumpet thing, I haven't quite figured that out yet. But
there's the whole, and this is coming from Philip Shepard, my friend and co-author in the book.
Yeah,
that's how he discovered about hara when he was teenager. He went to Japan to study theater, and there is this, according to him, probably the case is the oldest classical theater called Noah theater in Japan. N-O-H, and they essentially they move the body, they perform from hara. That's kind of the center of the awareness, and they just follow the kind of that intuition of that called second brain, right? That's what moves you on stage, and it has lots of truth behind it, and moves people, right? And it's kind of very cool when you can play music from that place, right? Because it's it's great. Like, and then the other thing I loved about the book was talking about all this is what I say to people. I said the stuff occurring at a biological and molecular level when your body is repairing itself. I found that fascinating. I hadn't heard any of that before. Well, kudos to Philip, because he managed to take this relatively dry subject, exercise, right? Who wants to read a book about exercise? And he wrote in a way that made it, that was our goal, to make it accessible to everyday reader, everyday person, so they simply understand, what we know, the importance of strength. And he did an amazing job in kind of telling the story around it, so make it accessible. And I think that's why our book does relatively well. I was on this podcast, a few weeks ago. I'm being interviewed and by this person who's in our business, high intensity business, and he interviews people like myself who own gyms and studios similar like this, and he was saying, there's many books about our topic, but yours seems to be doing better than most. And I thought about it after, and I thought that's probably because of Philip, because he managed to tell like such a compelling story for everyday people that
also the idea of he talked about how aerobic thing, we've had that rammed down our throats for the past 40 or 50 years. And then he talks about, then you got Bruce Kidd who died, the aerobic guy who died, like how great can it be? And it was just interesting contrasting the two concepts. But anyway, I think it's come along at the perfect time for me in my life.
No, that's essentially like you would be our demographics wrote the book, because I've been in this business at that time for several years. I've noticed that this is the client of New Element Training, and essentially we wanted to write the book for that demographics, which is majority of population. There may be
getting bigger.
Yeah, maybe exactly. Maybe there is like 20% of population, give or take, maybe go to gym. Maybe 5% of those actually know what they're doing. But what happens to the rest of the population? They're not gonna. You probably wouldn't go to typical gym, right? So we just did fairly good job in telling the story accessible to everyday normal people.
Well, it's for, like I said, non-gym rat.
Exactly.
Non-gym rats, I don't know if that's a good t-shirt.
No, this is... Well, it's probably better than my last t-shirt.
It's okay.
Even though I love my last t-shirt. All right. So, in terms of maybe to wrap up your experience with new element training,
Yeah.
have you noticed any changes, like physical performance-wise, and when you perform on stage or day-to-day life?
Let me think. I know I'd mentioned that I used to, my leg would fall asleep or I was standing on stage, and since doing this, that has gone away. Certainly, I think it's just a general. I think my posture's better, and I think, what, it's almost it's a subtle thing, but I no longer feel like an old man. If at the risk of sounding glib or whatever, I feel I have a certain vitality, and it's growing, and little things like, like lifting a outboard motor, like lifting things at the cottage that I've struggled with. It's like, holy, that's sort of a nice feeling,
This is essentially the essence of new element training, right? Exactly what you described.
Yeah.
Today I was here earlier, trained some clients, and this client, I've been client for against like maybe 3 years or so.
Yeah.
And he was showing me this picture. He was in UK climbing the tallest peak in UK, something like 8,000 whatever meters, something, significant elevation gain. And he was, kind of maybe similar to your age. And he was so excited that he could do it. And he was like, thank you to new element training. I can still do the things and tackle it. And I thought, well, that's what it's all about. It's about quality of life, right?
I like the fountain of youth component to it. The idea that, as you say in the book, that it's a scientific fact that you lose X amount of muscle mass as you age, and the idea that building that muscle mass back actually turns back the clock. I mean, I don't think that's just fantasy. I think that's real.
No, it's not just fantasy. Yeah. When you look at scientific literature, it is a fact, established fact. People have more muscle mass or strength. On average, they have longer longevity. They live longer. Yeah. Statistically speaking, they have, for whatever reasons, how it's associated, but they do live longer. So, and the goal here, essentially, with induced strength training, sustainably over time, is that you might not live a bit longer. Probably you will, at least based on all the research. But also how you're going to live. Well, what's you going to be last 10, 20 years? How they're going to look like? Are you going to be still, doing those hard hikes and enjoying life until the very end and just fall off the cliff and then you're done? That's kind of the way to go. Yeah. Or you're going to be,
infirm.
Yeah, in 10 years in a wheelchair and then like a burden to your family and all that stuff. So that's kind of what ultimately it's all about.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, Jim, you established and very, very successful, one of the probably few successful musicians because it's such a competitive industry, I'm guessing. So maybe tell our clients, audience a little bit about your professional achievements, what you've done, and then we can go from there.
Well, I've, for the past, 30 or 40 years, I've made a living as a musician, which first of all is unbelievable. But secondly, I've sort of been doing what was my dream job, which is writing music for television and film. And it's something that ever since I was, I've been playing trumpet since I was about 10. But when I was a teenager, I realized that the idea of wanting to be a successful songwriter, for example, the odds were just so against that I didn't think that was a practical pursuit. But the idea of writing music for, if it was to do the movies, having anything to do with movies, I felt it was a more realistic goal. And so I set about acquiring the skill set that I figured you'd need, and that I went to Humber College and studied, jazz arranging and trumpet and stuff. But then after that, I studied classical composition, counterpoint, orchestration stuff with Dr. Sam Doyle for a number of years. And then just sort of had my eye set on that goal. And in Toronto at the time, which would have been, 70s, 80s, it was a big center for advertising. So if any musician, whether they played in the Toronto Symphony or were the busiest jazz musician ever in town, everybody, it was sort of, I won't say it's a dirty little secret, but everyone did music for advertising, whether played on it or wrote it. Because Toronto was as big a hub for advertising as New York or Chicago. And it was a huge industry. There were, a million recording studios, many people were doing it. So that is something that I figured was a good way in. And it took me 10 years of sending out demo tapes and couldn't get arrested kind of thing until I got in. But the great thing about doing that work was that you were writing music to picture. You were, like, granted, they weren't 2 hours long, they were 30 seconds long, but it was the, most expensive filmmaking that there is. They fly to New Zealand or South Africa to shoot a beer commercial for 30 seconds, and then you have these gorgeous images to score to. And then the other fantastic thing was that you were working with, like I said, members of the Toronto Symphony in the best recording studios with the best engineers and, budgets, just out of sight for that kind of work. So I did that for 10 or 15 years. And at the same time, still had my eye on the ball of doing film and television. So I started doing short films for people, started establishing, always sending out demo reels, and then, got my first break doing, working on a show called Goosebumps, which was very popular with kids in the 90s. I was an assistant to the composer. That's a very common route in. And then I got my first television series, and then it's one of those things in a career, it just goes like this. Like, so I started getting work from the picture editor, and from the mixer, from the post supervisor, and then it just sort of starts fanning out. And but it took a long time. I mean, I didn't score my first movie till I was 40. I ended up doing a television series called Degrassi, The Next Generation, for 14 years, 15 years. I did a very popular CBC show called Republic of Doyle that was shot in Newfoundland. It was fun to work on a hit, if you will, where people, instead of, what are you working on? Oh, I'm working on this show called Sight Unseen, or they've never, and that's the thing. Most of the work I've done is that, where people have never heard of it, but it's been great. And I'm mortally afraid of the R word, retirement. I don't want to do that. But it's what's the great line about a guy's career in showbiz? Who's Jim McGrath? Get me Jim McGrath. Get me a young Jim McGrath. Who's Jim McGrath? I mean, it's hilarious, but it's really true.
But even in your field, composing music, retirement age matters. Like, you can probably write music in your 80s, right?
What I get a kick out of is John Williams, who's one of the greatest film composers ever, is 93, or is in his 90s, and he's going to score Steven Spielberg's next movie.
Exactly.
I mean, I've always felt that that was sort of the goal,
And which is a kind of cool thing to do, because as we become, experts in our profession and field, by the time we reach retirement age, we have this, this baggage of wisdom and knowledge, and then you retire, and in the society loses your knowledge. So the fact that you can continue, right, sharing your knowledge and wisdom, even at old age, speaks volume.
Yeah, and it's just, I don't know. I mean, it's a cliche, but I still feel like I'm 16. I mean, I really don't. I mean, I don't feel like that.
You know why? In my opinion, because when you create, music, whatever you create from your soul, and soul doesn't have an age. Body might have an age, but soul doesn't, right?
No,
so you're connected to it, and you feel.
And I love it. I mean, the interesting thing about music is that it's infinite in its. You can never know everything. It's just and it's a funny thing when you're doing the thing you love. I mean, I'm just crazy about it, and I just think about it all the time.
Yep.
And it's a bit. The only dangerous thing is it's a little bit like having all your eggs in one basket. I got to get some hobbies, man. But no, it's been, like I said, I feel really fortunate and lucky to have been able to pursue my passion, you know.
I mean, there for sure was some luck involved, but look at your story. You knew what you wanted to do at the age of 10. I think we as humans, generally, particularly younger humans, we have hard time knowing who we are and what we want in life.
Lucky.
And this is kind of my story is similar as well. Is, what is that I want to do that I wouldn't feel like I'm working, and that's kind of what led me to open New Element Training. Because once you know what you want, then you just go get it.
Yeah.
And you knew that at a young age, and probably that's why you be here, but you're so successful because you knew what you wanted. And then it just obviously you need to have skills and some talent and so on. But ultimately, if you're persistent, right, you know what you want.
I'll tell you though, it's a funny thing. I've often said I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy's kid to pursue it, but it's one of those things too that you can't tell somebody, oh no, that's not it. I remember, here's a great story. So in grade 13, that's when I was going to school, I went to grade 13, everyone said, what are you doing next year? And I told this one girl who I sort of liked, I said, well, I'm going to Humber College, I'm going to become a musician. And she sort of looked down her nose and she said, a musician? You mean like, Patricia's dad, who was just, a dentist who played on the weekends. And so I said, no, I want to be like a studio musician and do records and TV and stuff, and I'm really serious. Or she goes, well, okay, good luck. And then years later, things aren't going so good. I'm a bicycle courier. I have no money. It's February. I'm just head to toe in Gore-Tex. I've got a pager and it's the middle of February. And I run into her in a business suit, coming out of a bank. And I go, hi, Janet. And he goes, hi, Janet. And it was classic.
Yeah.
And then it's funny, years later, oh, you know what? That's the end of that story.
No. Tell me. I want to know.
Years later, I thought, I'm doing pretty good. I wonder whatever happened to her. And so I looked it up, and she ended up marrying the president of a bank. So she did okay.
She did okay, yeah. But so did you, right? So.
Yeah, but it was funny. I thought,
yeah,
pretty good now. But no.
But you know what? You actually passionate what you do. You love what you do, rather than chasing just purely money. Who cares?
Well, the great thing, I often used to say this, that the weird, I suppose I knew that in addition to doing music for film and television advertising, is that it's one of those things, if it's going really well, it can be very lucrative. And in advertising, what the lucrative thing was, every 13 weeks, they played the commercial that you had done, they would pay you 50% of your original fee again. So suddenly you went, oh my God. And also, they would contribute on all, these big multinational advertising companies were giving you 11% pension on all your earnings. So by the time you're done,
it's all adds up, right?
And then similarly with music for TV in particular, every time your piece of music plays on TV around the world, it generates royalties. Like it's crazy.
Is it still like this today, or it's different?
It is like that as long as it's what's called terrestrial broadcasting, which means as long as there's commercials, like as long as it's on television. The streaming thing is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, so the rules are different, right?
It is, and I'm sure the composers who are working on the huge shows on Netflix, like The Queen's Gambit, what have you, it's a similarly lucrative thing. But for the in my experience, the string making has not been up to that big a bonus.
Because looks like we're moving towards streaming away. Lots of family household don't want to have cable TV anymore, right?
Again, my line about I wouldn't want my worst enemies into the business that I'm in. But no, it's actually one of the few good things about being older.
Yeah, but as I said, when you get into it, 70s, 80s, looks like there were lots of jobs, and if you're decent, you can probably pay your rent, right, and make some living. Until you figure out, be log enough, get your name out there, send those reels, right, and word of mouth kicks in, and all of a sudden you have a name and people hiring you, right?
No, it's and again, you can't tell someone who's passionate about something that they should or shouldn't do it.
Speaking of passion, so what's your creative process? Like when you composing a piece, like you have a process, how?
When you're working on let's say a feature film, generally what you do is you sit down with the director and you watch the film together, and you very oftentimes they have used music from other movies and records and what have you, and they've temporarily put it into the thing just because, particularly things like horror and comedy and action. If you were to see those pictures with no music in it, it just lies there. So they put it's called temp score, and that just sort of establishes. It's a way of the filmmakers communicating to both their producers and financial people and everyone else what they're thinking of, and also a way of communicating to the composer, at least this is where we're at right now. And then what you do is you watch it, you talk about what did you like about that, what did you like about this, what have you. And then the main job is you sit there and you don't listen to that and you decide, okay, we should have music start right here, it should come out here, let's don't have any music here, this really needs some help. Oftentimes with all this,
and this you and director deciding what gives
and then you go away, and then you just it's a mystery, but you just fool around and you are inspired by what it, like oftentimes, for example, you'd be watching it and just with enough experience and stuff to go, okay, you know what, it's about right here. It feels like the pace of the scene, the whatever the energy of it, you can feel a sort of a pulse, and then you decide, well, you know what? When she opens the door, I really should do change there, or etc. That kind of thing. And then you just, you just start fooling about, and I mean, that's where for computers have just been unbelievably great for that, because what you can do is that you can just you have the picture running in your computer, you just go into record, and then you can just improvise and fool around and then stumble upon something that works great.
Yeah.
And it's literally that kind of openness and trial and error and just being playful with it that is where the good stuff comes from.
So in a way it's storytelling, but storytelling through music. So like in the director kind of gives you the tone, what they try to achieve, what kind of reaction and emotion from the audience, and then you take that information and you tell the story, right?
And various, I mean, I remember it was interesting when I was working on Degrassi all those years, I used to liken it to using an eyedropper of music. In other words, you didn't want it to become melodramatic or corny or syrupy or whatever. You just wanted to be so subtle and so just supporting, not leading, and all the nuance of that is the sort of thing that certainly does come with experience. And I remember the most recent project that I did, I was doing it with a partner, and we had to come up with the score to, the pilot episode of a major national television piece, like in a week. Usually you have a month or two to do that. And it's the experience of all those years of doing it. You just kind of go, okay, let's go.
No, exactly.
And there's something really rewarding about that, to be honest with you.
I believe you because you creating, and frankly, it's just one of the expressions, the kind of the avenue allows you to express your creativity, and connecting to that inner truth, whatever you name, there's different names for it, and creating from there. It's whether it's you painting, you writing music, or you running a gym. It feels very, very special. And I remember many years ago, personal little story, driving to work, already opening your training and, being in this hustle state where I'm trying to figure out the business and being grateful for the opportunity I have, owning a business. I have an opportunity to create. So, like, there's nobody above you tell you what to do, what not to do. It's like literally, if I wanna, do this, I just go do this and execute it and I create something. And it's very rewarding, even though it's less artistic than writing a music score, but you kind of, particularly when I practice mindfulness, I felt like I was connecting to my inner self a bit, and creating from there felt super rewarding because I didn't know what's going to come up. Whatever comes up, and I just take it. So I kind of start with empty slate, and just clear my mind. And the foundation of new element training packages came, many years ago. I would go into back room at university location when we were facing university. We had, clinical, like RMT room. I would lay down in the bed and I would meditate. And I would just, clear my mind and like, okay, what kind of packages we try to create? And then it just like whatever comes, and that was the foundation of our current packages.
Cool. Very cool.
So
that's not dissimilar. From composing, creativity.
How was your family when you were a kid, and did you have any pressure for your parents to do something more serious than being a musician?
Well, my dad was a PhD in metallurgy research scientist, and my mom was a medical secretary. And there was always I came from a family of 5 kids. I was the eldest. There was always the expectation that, of course, you want your person, and there was just an expectation of, well, of course you're going to get great marks, and of course you're going to be a good student, and this and that. The idea of pursuing, being a trumpet player, like they obviously couldn't have been that thrilled about it, but they were very supportive. And I remember there was a period of time, I think, shortly following the bicycle courier years, where I actually quit music, went back to rewrote all my grade 13 subjects, got into U of T electrical engineering, took electrical engineering for a few years, and I know my dad was never happier, and then quit that and gave music another go, and it took that time. But my parents were incredibly supportive. I don't have the cliche artistic story about my parents being horrible or anything of that. And my mother in particular has always been sort of my biggest fan of my classical music. Like, I also write, they call it concert music or whatever, for orchestras, and she is sort of my number one audience when I'm writing that music, and that has been a wonderfully fulfilling relationship because she's always just been an enormous classical music fan, so that's been a lot of fun. Even more so than any of my film or television work. That's really, I guess it's legit. I know. They like it.
Well, clearly your mom saw something, right? And then she encouraged you to pursue your passion, your talent, and it paid off. So very cool. Okay, Jim. So, what would be in your bucket list? So, given when you are in your life right now, what you wish you would still able to do?
I'd love to work at Abbey Road. That's for sure. Because that's sort of that's where a lot of the big feature film scores have been scored. And then like the Beatles. I mean, that's just sort of that's your Mount Everest, I'd like to, as far as a bucket list goes, I'd like to just keep doing what I'm doing, to tell you the truth. I've sort of I would love to, like, I also write arrangements for recording artists and stuff, and more recently, for example, Stephen Page, who was in the Bare Naked Ladies, I've done, a dozen arrangements for symphony orchestra accompanying him. And I love that kind of work. So the idea of working with other, recording artists of any sort of stature would be something that would be very exciting to do. But otherwise, I don't really have any, I don't really rue anything that I haven't been able to do.
Yeah, you have a beautiful wife, you have grandkids, and I know you go to cottage and you do lots of babysitting.
I just, like I said, more of saying please.
Yeah. So you're happy, you're content. No, it's very, very, very nice. I'm very happy for you. So, I really, truly appreciate sharing your story with me and our clients at New Element Training. I'm sure they will appreciate it a lot as well, the same way I do. You have an amazing and inspiring story of someone who knew what he wanted and he got it. It reminds me, what got me into mindfulness in the early stages of New Element Training. This client, his name was Bernard Bain, and he was a director. And he told me one day, he said, you know what, you don't become director, nobody gives it to you. You go get it. You decide to become one and you go get it. And this is true in life, right? If you want something, you can't just sit waiting for somebody to give it to you. You have to go and get it and claim it. And looks like that's what you've done and definitely paid off. That's the trick. Yeah. So yeah.
You know what? It's still an enormous amount of, when I say luck, I just mean the idea that you met this person and they happen to know this person and you knew, like, it's that kind of, like, I've always maintained it's alchemy, like the idea of, or the idea it's not doing the work, it's getting the work. Like there's just no rhyme or reason to it. It certainly wasn't me cold calling people and stuff. It's just kind of a, I don't know. I can't really account for how it all happened.
But
it's I mean, also, you know what? Being there's a thing that musicians refer to as being a good hang, which means being someone that is fun to hang out with, and that's a very important thing. I think in any industry, but particularly with musicians, it's all about relationships and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
it really is.
I guess good energy when you get along with people, good energy, and
It really is. It's as a matter of fact, a lot of work I get now are from colleagues, not like another composer either recommending me or wanting to work with me on something. I mean, so that there's something to be said for that. And it isn't by being sort of falsely, glibly glad-handing and stuff. It's just about being like, it's just being a good person, a good sense of humor helps.
Yeah.
I mean, about it.
Well, you clearly also smart enough to get to electrical engineering is probably one of the hardest engineering jobs there is.
I loved that year and a half of after being chronically underemployed, for in my early 20s to work. Speaking, not unlike New Element Training, to tell you the truth, the idea of working really hard is a very attractive thing to me. And the problem with being a musician is that you are chronically underemployed in large chunks of your career. You spend a lot of time not doing the thing that you want. You're doing still afters, the same with anyone pursuing a creative field. And sure, there's those periods where you're working, 12, 16-hour days. It's just crazy, but there's a lot of downtime.
Yeah.
That's why I took up golf. Because golf, it is a great way of killing a good 6 hours of your day. And I play golf with all my musician pals that I went to Humber College with. So that's been, I suppose that is my other non-musical hobby. And again, New Element has been awfully handy for my golf game. That's for sure. With your little torso machine.
Exactly, the little things.
Yeah. So that, you know, that's the other reality about life in the creative field, is the downtime part is challenging.
Well, looks like you're in a very good place right now. Again, see, I know you have your grandkids. So how many grandkids do you have? Two, yeah. And you, because sometimes I know you go to cottage and you babysitting them, and you love that, right?
Yeah.
Being around
Well,
them.
also their parent, my daughter and son-in-law are nurses, so their schedule is crazy, and so my wife and I take care of them. It's that's the other thing, is that, I mean, the idea of spending time with the grandkids, like, we're so lucky in that regard, because they could live in Vancouver or something. Yeah, awesome.
Well, here is Jim and his story. Jim, if anybody wants to maybe check you out, listen to your music, is there a place they could go to? Spotify?
I just GenieAwards.ca.
How do you spell your last name?
Okay, my last name is spelled McGrath, which it is McGrath. But if you're from Ireland or Newfoundland, it's McGrath.
So, jimmcgrath.ca, make sure you spell it properly, and then you can see Jim's work there. Awesome, man. Thank you very much for
My pleasure.
being here
It was great.
shooting this episode.
Yeah.